Good morning. Welcome to Concord Baptist Church and our Sunday School hour. Let's all stand as we begin by saying the pledge to our nation's flag. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And our first hymn for this morning is number 249, Glorify Thy Name. Our Bible reading this morning is from 2 Kings 23, reading verses 1 through 37. 2 Kings 23, beginning in verse 1. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of the Lord. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord, and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant. And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem, in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them until Bethel. And he put down the idolatrous priest, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the city of Judah, and in the places around about Jerusalem, them also that burned incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it to small powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people. And he brake down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings for the grove. And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah, and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Geba to Beersheba, and break down the high places of the gates that were in the entering in of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places came not up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem, but they did eat of the unleavened bread among their brethren. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire to Moloch. And he took away the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun at the entering in of the house of the Lord, by the chamber of Nathan-Melech, the chamberlain, which was in the suburbs, and burned the chariots of the sun with fire. And the altars that were on top of the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of the Lord, did the king beat down and break them down from thence, and cast the dust of them into the brook Kidron. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which are on the right hand of the Mount of Corruption, which Solomon, the king of Israel, had builded for Ashtaroth, the abomination of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. And he brake in pieces the images, and cut down the groves, and filled their places with the bones of men. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, he made both that altar and the high place he brake down, and burned the high place, and stamped it to small powder, and burned the grove. And as Josiah turned himself, he spied the sepulchres that were there in the mount, and sent, and took the bones out of the sepulchres, and burned them upon the altar, and polluted it, according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then he said, "What title is that I see?" And the men of the city told him, "It is the sepulchre of the man of God, which came from Judah, and proclaimed these things that thou hast done against the altar of Bethel." And he said, "Let him alone. Let no man move his bones." So they let his bones alone with the bones of the prophet that came out of Samaria. And all the houses also of the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord to anger, Josiah took away, and did to them according to all the acts that he had done in Bethel. And he slew all the priests of the high places that were there upon the altars, and burned men's bones upon them, and returned to Jerusalem. And the king commanded all the people, saying, Keep the Passover unto the Lord your God, as it is written in the book of this covenant. Surely there was not holden such a Passover from the days of the judges that judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel, nor of the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, wherein this Passover was holden to the Lord in Jerusalem, moreover, the workers with familiar spirits, and the wizards, and the images, and the idols, and all the abominations that were spied in the land of Judah and Jerusalem, did Josiah put away, that he might perform the words of the law which were written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of the Lord. And like unto him there was no king before him that turned to the Lord with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses, neither after him arose any like him. Notwithstanding, the Lord turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, wherein his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all of the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him withal. And the Lord said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and will cast off this city Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, my name shall be there. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Judah? And in his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went against him, and he slew him at Megiddo when he had seen him. And his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own sepulchre. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him, and made him king in his father's stead. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamatal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which is evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all his fathers had done. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land to tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoahaz away, and he came to Egypt and died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold of the people of the land, of every one according to his taxation, to give it to Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did that which is evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all his fathers had done. Pastor, would you lead us in prayer this morning?
Father God, we thank you so much for the reading of your perfect and infallible word, and we ask that you would add your blessing to the reading of your word. Lord, we read in this chapter of a land that had just given itself completely over to paganism. And Lord, we just pray that you would keep our eyes open and our hearts turned toward you, that we would not allow ourselves to drift into the paganism of our world. God, there are so many on our prayer list this morning. We lift them before you and ask that you would glorify yourself through what you're going to do in their lives. Father, we continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We just ask that you would bring this conflict to a speedy end. God, we pray for our Sunday school teachers this morning, that you would use them to communicate the truth of your word into our hearts, that we would be a transformed people because we've been in your presence. God, we pray for our military personnel, wherever they may be, that you would protect them, bring them home quickly and safely, and be with their loved ones during their absence. Lord, we love you with all of our soul, and we trust you with all of our heart. We offer to you our love, our lives, and this prayer, in and through the name of Jesus, our risen Lord and Master. Amen.
And our next hymn for this morning is number 260, Holy Bible, Book Divine. Good morning again. I'd like to welcome everyone out this morning. If we have any guests with us today, we want to extend a special welcome and invite you back again as you have opportunity. We also want to welcome those that are joining us over the internet. In the way of announcements, we are in need of bags of candy for the Community Trunk or Treat Extravaganza at the Mission Center, October 31st, and you can put those on the front pew. We're also in need of some people that would decorate their vehicle, treat kids, and be part of this event. And our golden offering for Tennessee Mission goal is $1,400, and we ask that you would pray what God would have you to give so that we can reach Tennesseans with the gospel, and we do currently have $1,000 towards that goal. We'll also be having our annual hot dog cookout bonfire this Saturday, so please make plans to join us, and we ask that you bring side dishes and drinks. And then the West Green FCA will be at Concord next Sunday night, so please make plans to join us for that as well. Pastor, do you have any other announcements?
We need to be in prayer for Angie's little sister, Gloria. Gloria's got a doctor's appointment, not this week, but next, so be in prayer for her. Continue to pray for Brother Nick. Pray for our ladies many of our ladies that are over in Pigeon Forge right now. Have been there Friday and Saturday, and their conference will conclude today. So be in prayer for them. Be in prayer for Scarlett Carter, for Miss Barbara, Miss Mary. Be in prayer for Jenny and Terry. We did hear from Jenny this week, and then also I spoke to Mary this morning. They are evacuating wives and non-essential personnel from the embassy in Jerusalem. Jenny will be coming home on Tuesday, but Terry is remaining in Israel. So be in prayer, traveling mercies for Jenny, and then be in prayer for Terry as he remains in Jerusalem. Continue to pray for Carolyn and Tim, for Tucker Courtney, for Miss Beth. Be in prayer for Cindy Curry. She broke her ankle on top of having chemotherapy for breast cancer, so be in prayer for her. Be in prayer for Miss Betty. Be in prayer for Miss Geneva. Be in prayer for Lisa Dyer. She has pneumonia and a blood clot on her lungs, so be in prayer for her. Be in prayer for Addison Goodrich, for Miss Elizabeth, for Miss Jody. She did have her first chemo this week. It began a little rough. They ran them all over the campus. I know none of y'all have ever had an issue with doctors not really seeming to know what's going on, but anyway, be in prayer for her. Her temperature is low, which is an unusual side effect. And so she's cold, which, again, is very unusual for Jody. So be in prayer for her. And then part of the medicine that they gave to stimulate her immune response is causing her bones to hurt. And hopefully that will pass quickly.
Soon.
So be in prayer for her on that. Continue to pray for Miss Brenda, for Miss Vicky, for the family of June Gerald, and the family of Patty Malone, for Brandy and Junior in Belize. They did post this week. They had a Bible study there on campus, and he said even this time of year, the heat index was 116. And little Nico, those of you that have been with us, little Nico will just grab your heart. When he is so cute, and he's growing up and had some great questions, great conversation with Junior. Continue to pray for Mark Robertson and his family in Columbia, for Eric Thomas, for Cole Wallace, for an unspoken request in Angie's family and Jody's family, and then several other unspoken requests. We also have a request to pray for Joyce Stills. She has an 85% blockage in her carotid artery, and they're going to be doing surgery soon. Be in prayer for Angie. She's not with us this morning. Last night, her right gum started bleeding very profusely. And all of the blood in her mouth, it made her nauseous and sick. And so she's recovering this morning, so be in prayer for her. 6 or 6:30, I think.
Yeah, not on there.
What time do we decide? Sun usually goes down at 7, so
6:30 works.
6:30 sounds good.
And the FCA will be here at normal time, 6:45.
Okay. Do I have any other prayer requests or announcements? Okay, then we'll sing Happy Birthday to those with birthdays this week.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you.
And our next hymn is number 244, Spirit of the Living God. And our Sunday school time will begin in just a moment.
Get started. Obviously, this morning we're looking at Jesus healing a little boy that had been possessed by a demon, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I don't know if y'all watched this show. Angie and I have found this show. We found it. The first season is on Netflix called The Chosen, and it was a weekly television show. I don't know. It may still be in production. It is a wonderful, fictitious, Bible-based account of the life of Jesus. And what makes this really intriguing is that it's not a 30-minute or hour-long movie or 2-hour-long movie. It is, right now there's 3 seasons of this show. And it really, I mean, obviously one of the things that you always have to be careful of when you're watching something like this is that a lot of the dialogue is not in Scripture. And we got to make sure that we're not saying, well, that's exactly the way it happened. It could have happened that way, but Scripture doesn't say that it happened that way. And so we have to be careful. But I said all of that to say this. Number one, I just ordered the books, the Bible study guides for this. And once I have time to prepare, we're going to start doing that as our evening service. We're going to have a Bible study for our evening service where we'll watch clips from the series and then we will study what that means, what that clip covered that week. But anyway, obviously I've got to have time to get my notes together and all of that. But and I'll let you know when it happens. But the point of all of this is that Jesus was not the kind of Messiah they were expecting. He was the kind of Messiah Scripture had prophesied, okay, but he was not the kind of Messiah they were expecting. They expected a Messiah that was going to come and absolutely rout the Romans and overthrow them. There is a non-canonical book called the Psalms of Solomon, and they believed that the Messiah, king who was the son of David, would rid Jerusalem of all non-Jews and shatter the power of the Gentiles with an iron rod. In the end, he would force the nations to serve him, and the 12 tribes would regain their territorial homes. So let me ask you a question. Who is that Messiah all about? Well, it's not about him. He's all about them. Do you understand what I'm saying? It wasn't that they were going to serve Messiah. It's that their notion of Messiah was going to serve them and give them something. And that's one of the problems that we see throughout the gospel accounts, is that there were a lot of people following Jesus not because he was the Messiah, but because of what he could give them, what he could do for them. Anyway, Jesus always wanted a faith response to him. And our faith only gets stronger when it's stretched. Now, here's the deal. We don't like our faith being stretched, right? Because what stretches your faith? Times when your faith is not nearly enough, and you know it. And you, like the man in our text this morning, have to ask the Lord to help your unbelief, to help stretch your faith. You know, all of us would love to be an elite, world-class athlete, except for all of the training that goes into actually becoming an elite, world-class athlete. It's a lot of work. And you have to, you know, I mean, here's what gets me. You know, Subway is running all these commercials with professional ball stars. How many of you honestly think those guys eat at Subway? Okay? They cannot eat that kind of food and remain the elite athlete that they are. Okay? That really didn't have anything to do with this. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the only way that our faith will be strengthened is when we're put into situations where our faith is stretched. Now, in Mark 9 and forward, this is a shift in Mark's gospel from presenting Jesus as a miracle worker to a renewed focus on a teaching Messiah. Where all of this took place was in the vicinity of Caesarea Philippi. And that's actually not just one place. It is a collection of small villages about 25 miles north of the Sea of Galilee. And what Mark has been showing us in his gospel is that the entirety of the law and the prophets are completed in Jesus. Brother Lou, you read 17 and 18, please. And Sharon, you read 19 and 20, please. Now, Obviously, there are going to be some people that will look at a text like this and they will say, you Christians see a demon in everything. And obviously they would say our understanding of medical science has improved to the point that we don't have to associate all sickness with demon possession. And while that's certainly true, I mean, we're going to talk about it in our sermon this morning. There are inevitable consequences, right? If my diet consists of hamburgers and French fries, okay, what should I expect? Number one, I should expect to be obese. I should expect to have high cholesterol. I should expect to have multiple surgeries to correct the things that I did. That has nothing to do with a demon. It has everything to do with lifestyle choices that I made. But in this text, it is very clear, Scripture tells us that this boy was demon-possessed. There was a great deal of demonic activity going on in the world at the time of Jesus. Now, listen to me. I absolutely believe, just as I said, that there are things that we now understand that are caused by various factors in the world. But that does not mean that I don't believe in demon possession. I have seen people that I knew were demon possessed. You could see it in their eyes. I knew they were possessed, okay? And they weren't sick, okay? They were just possessed. I knew that they were possessed. And if you've been other places in the world, why don't we see more demon possession in the United States than we see in perhaps developing nations? Because we're not very effective at proclaiming the gospel in our land. Satan doesn't need to demon-possess people. The church is ignoring them into hell. Okay? Satan doesn't have to possess them into hell. We're ignoring them into hell. Whereas in parts of the world where the gospel is being fearlessly proclaimed, and when battle lines have been drawn with Satan and his kingdom, we see this kind of activity. And so anyway, this father who is at the end of his rope, listen, beloved, those of y'all that have been with a child that is grievously ill know what this is about. It weighs on you. It wears on you. And this man is out of options. And he's heard about this miracle-working teacher, this man of God that is in their region. And he comes desperate to Jesus and says, I brought my son to you. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to take care of this, but they couldn't. We'll talk about that in a moment. And Jesus, a lot of times, some of the things that Jesus says seems out of character for him, right? Or out of place. Why would Jesus say, "Oh, unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you?" Okay. How long do I have to put up with you, That's pretty harsh. Listen, beloved, sometimes we need to be verbally slapped. That's what this is. It's a verbal slap to get the disciples' attention. When Jesus said that he was going to Jerusalem and that he was going to be crucified on a Roman cross, and Peter said, "No, Lord, I will not let that happen." we would have expected Jesus to say, now, Peter, don't you think you're being a little bit of a drama queen here? Okay? I mean, come on, Peter, get with the program. No. Jesus looked this man in the eye and said, get thee behind me, Satan. That is a verbal slap right upside the head. Because Peter needed to be stopped in his tracks and be reminded. Listen to me. He needed to be reminded of the necessity of the cross. And Jesus, why did the disciples fail in casting out this young man's demon? In your mind, how do you think this went? You know, Dad brings the little boy to the disciples. You think Peter stepped up first and said, you know, I cast thee out. And then Peter failed, and maybe James and John, did they all give it a run? We don't know. We're not told. And in a few moments, we're going to see why they failed. We're going to see exactly why they failed bringing this demon out of this boy. And anyway, Jesus directed this comment toward his disciples because their faith had faltered in a crucial moment. Why do coaches train their athletes so hard? Because they're not going to be on the field with that athlete during the game. The athlete has to be able to perform flawlessly what the coach has trained them to do. And it's the same thing with Jesus. Jesus knows his time is limited, that he's going to die. He will not physically be present with these men. And he knows what they're going to be called to do. They're going to be called to sow the seeds that will eventually result in Concord Baptist Church and every other church that's on the planet today. And they're going to have to be able to execute flawlessly without him present. Okay? And so Jesus has to get their attention. He verbally slaps them to get their attention. He had taught them things that they didn't seem to grasp. And he had given them power they failed to use. Hello? There might be a sermon in that. He had taught them things they had failed to grasp and given them power they failed to use. Beloved, do you understand that we as Christians have divine power that has been given to us? The disciples' lack of faith kept them from healing the boy. They had been going through the motions of ritual, or they were depending on their own abilities. You know, you watch other faiths pray, and what is one of the things? How many of y'all have ever been like in an Episcopal church? And are y'all like me? That when you're in a church, even like at Bible's Chapel or Warrensburg, if their hymnals are different than the ones we have, you get one out and look at it, right? Okay. And in an Episcopal church, the first time I saw it, there was this Book of Common Prayer. And they even use it in larger Methodist churches. Written prayers. Somebody else wrote a prayer that you expect me to pray. Well, what good does that do? I can't pray your prayers. I have to pray my prayers. And you have to pray your prayers. No matter whether they're good, whether they're phrased properly, You know, prayer is talking to God. And the reason, listen to me, the reason that the disciples could not cast this young man, or the demon out of this young man, is because they thought they had this. And they were just going through the motions. They thought that if they did A, B, and C, that D would naturally follow. Okay? We have to be on guard in our personal life that we don't get into a rut and just begin going through the motions of ritual or depending on our own abilities, because that is the surest way to fail. Geneva, would you read verses 21 through 24, please? Oh, okay. John, would you read 21 through 24, please?
How long has this been happening to him? Jesus asked his father. From childhood, he said. Many times it has thrown him into fire or water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. And Jesus said to him, if you can, everything is possible for the one who believes. Immediately the father of the boy cried out, I do believe. Help my unbelief.
I underlined, everything is possible for the one who believes. Now, this is both a challenge and a rebuke. How long has this been going on? Since he was a little boy. All things are possible to him who believes. Do you understand that it's a rebuke? That you haven't had enough faith from childhood to deal with this. But what Jesus is saying is that this can be fixed today if you have faith. And the man understood what Jesus was saying in that sentence, because he said, I do believe, help my unbelief. I do believe, help my unbelief. I understand that my lack of belief in the power of God has led to this encounter with the Messiah of God. And I want to have the kind of faith. I don't want my lack of faith to stand between the Messiah of God and the healing of my little boy. The man needed to put his complete trust in Jesus and Jesus' ability to do what only God can do. Things that seem beyond the reach and comprehension of humanity are where God's power makes the impossible possible. Can I get a witness? Listen, I've seen things in my life that can only be explained by the power of God. Okay? I've seen things in my life that can only be explained by the power of God. We need to have the same attitude that this father had. We need to admit our shortcomings when it comes to faith and trust Jesus to help them mature. As believers, we face a constant tension between the amount of faith we have and the doubts that whittle away at our confidence. The more we exercise our belief in Jesus, the stronger our faith becomes. God doesn't expect us to have perfect faith. So when we have moments of fear and doubt, do we turn toward God or do we shy away from Him? If we're keeping some things in our life from God, hello? Hello? Can you keep anything from God? You can try. He already knows. He's just waiting for us to talk to Him about it so that He can do something about it. He's not going to be able to do something about it until we're open and honest with Him. if we're keeping some things in our life from God, whether it's doubts, fears, or something else, we need to take the step now to bring them to God. Bob, would you read 25 and 26, please? And Nick, would you read 27 through 29, please?
Jesus taking him by the hand raised him, and he stood up. After he had gone into the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" And he told them, "This kind can only come out by nothing but prayer."
Why did they fail? Because they didn't pray. That's what Jesus tells them. Guys, you didn't pray about this. You thought you had it. How many of y'all have ever watched any movie where the central theme of it was a Catholic exorcist being involved? Okay, some of us may remember the haunting tune. You've got it in your head right now from The Exorcist in the 70s. And we've seen, like, what was the name of the movie? It's The House. Not Richard. Anyway, y'all know the one I'm talking about, where the house was haunted in, like, Connecticut. That one, yeah, the Amityville Horror. And we see this exorcist come in, and it's a ritual. From the moment he begins, he takes the stole out and kisses it and puts it over his neck. And he gets the holy water out, and he lays it out, and he gets the scripture out, and he reads certain set words in Latin, because evidently demons only understand Latin. Okay. And obviously the teaching there is that if you do A, B, C, and D, then the demon will be cast out. This kind cannot come out by anything but prayer. Guys, you got ahead of the game. You thought. See, we give the Catholics such a hard time for their rituals and thinking that rituals produce something meaningful. Well, the apostles beat them to the punch by about 400 or 500 years, okay? Because they thought that because they had successfully cast demons out the first time Jesus sent them out, that they had this now, and that all they had to do was just say, "Come out," and it would be done. But clearly, they didn't pray about this thing. Jesus exerted his divine authority as God the Son over the evil spirit. The disciples had failed to rely on God's authority, and that's why they weren't able to exorcise the spirit. So, obviously we see that a crowd's starting to gather. Jesus doesn't want that. And so he sees the crowd gathering, and he quickly rebukes the unclean spirit, and he deals with this, and Jesus raises the young man. And after he'd gone into the house, he wanted to get away from this crowd. The disciples, to their credit, wanted to know why they had failed. And they wisely turned to Jesus for an explanation and direction. Jesus' words emphasize the importance of prayer and complete reliance on God's authority in spiritual warfare. They assumed that their past successes were enough to guarantee success in this case. Listen to me, beloved. Let me use a sports metaphor. How many times have we seen the University of Tennessee football team assume that because they beat this team in the past, they're going to beat them again today? No matter what. All they have to do is show up, and it's going to be a W. Well, Vanderbilt showed them a couple of years ago. That doesn't work, okay? South Carolina showed them last year. That doesn't work. You walk into a game not prepared, you're going to fail. And if we walk into spiritual warfare unprepared, we're going to fail. We need to nurture an ongoing relationship with the Father through Jesus. We need a daily connection with God if we're going to tackle each new challenge that comes our way. The emphasis in this passage is not on our ability to have faith, but on God's ability to strengthen our faith through our dependence on Him. Think about how you can become more dependent on God to use you to help others. Questions or comments this morning? All right, thank you. If you're joining us online, we'll be back in about 3 to 4 minutes for our morning worship.